The following Koen's Corner discusses a variety of topics that some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. We have already tackled some episodes of the classic Spongebob era. Now let's take a stab at the not-so-classic era. After the utter disaster that was Season 6 and Season 7, and the underwhelming Season 8, things finally started to pick back up for SpongeBob in Season 9. This was the season where Steven Hillenburg decided to come back, who would bring back some of that old magic that made SpongeBob so special in the first place. Although the season still had its lows, when the season hit, it hit hard, which the show still has a habit of doing several seasons and years later. However, as much of an improvement as it was, as for Every Plankton's Pet, which was a brilliant episode, there was a Little Yellow Book, which is my personal least favorite of the whole show. But then there's episodes that are incredibly divisive among fans, to say the least. One of which is the infamous Squid Baby, which we're gonna take a look at today. Buckle up, creators. This is a spicy one.
This episode is going to make fun of head trauma, while simultaneously having Patrick and SpongeBob take care of an adult in a diaper, on a kid's show.
I usually come to SpongeBob for comedy, and this episode is terribly unfunny. Not to mention that this is all revolving around the torment of Squidward for comedic reasons.
This episode is the most uncomfortable thing I've ever watched.
Fetish movie.
Yeah, that's what this episode is. That's all this episode is. It's a fetish episode.
Squid Baby revolves around Squidward getting a really bad head injury, which would revert the poor guy back to being essentially a baby. He spends the whole episode in diapers and is to be looked after by SpongeBob and Patrick, who got him in those diapers in the first place. Yeah, the concept is about as wild in practice as it sounds on paper, but at the same time it actually has a lot of truth to it. You see, head injuries tend to do a variety of things to someone. Many get dizzy a lot, some may end up in a wheelchair, while others may suffer brain damage. But it also can cause a phenomenon called age regression. Age regression is when someone reverts back to the behavior and/or thought patterns of a younger age than they are. It's often caused by mental health struggles like PTSD or anxiety, but it can also be caused by a severe head injury like Squidward is suffering here. Yeah, this is another example of an episode discussion a serious subject matter in its own SpongeBob way. And as stated in the intro, this is one of the more divisive ones. You see, Squid Baby is structured very differently than most episodes that tackle serious subject matters like this. This certainly is not quite like Pickles, which took a serious subject matter and sugars the pill, as my friend Strider puts it, in a decent amount of jokes. This makes the subject matter much lighter and still discusses it in a way that kids and adults alike understand. Squid Baby seems to be similar to Have You Seen the Snail, which I talked about quite some time ago. It doesn't really tell a whole lot of jokes. It portrays Squidward's situation very realistically. Very little of what we're seeing is played for laughs, and before the end of it, you are rooting for him to recover from his head injury he has sustained. On paper, I think this concept is quite fitting for a SpongeBob episode. This is not the kind of show that would shy away from serious subject matters like this, let alone pull very many punches when doing so. However, ideas and concepts only go so far. Its execution is where it really counts. And this is where the episode starts to show some problems, and where much of its criticism comes from.
They wouldn't know real culture even if it hit them like a truck full of cement. No! You're going out this door right now!
We're not mad at us, are you, Squidward? Squidward?
Stupid jellyfish! Beat it! Whoa!
Squid torture. A term that, if you're active in the SpongeBob community, would sound quite familiar to you. It's a term used to group episodes together that seem to have been made specifically to cause loads of pain to poor old Squidward. Often for very little reason other than he was just looking a bit grumpy that one day. The amount of episodes that revolve around this one idea alone is quite astounding. But then again, we are talking about a rather astounding show. So I get it is strangely fitting in a way? It's complicated. You see, squid torture has been a big part of the show since its inception, jellyfishing being one of the first examples of having Squidward going through loads of pain, mostly at the hands of SpongeBob and Patrick. And these kinds of episodes have been a staple of the show ever since. The only slightly massive issue with this is that it's very easy for a story that relies on this concept to get really messed up very quickly, often tormenting Squidward to such a degree that it becomes very uncomfortable to sit through a lot of the time, resulting in a story where all you really want by the end is for SpongeBob and Patrick to just leave the guy alone. Or for them to at least get a good kick in the sponges. Good Neighbors, Cephalopod Lodge, That Sinking Feeling, and Jellyfishing are prime examples of such episodes. Squid Baby is often put on a very similar pedestal as all of these, because of how much Squidward has to suffer throughout it. Regressing to a very young age, thanks to his bad head injury, topped by getting constantly beaten to shit by SpongeBob and Patrick, which would only make his head trauma much worse as stated within the episode itself.
He mustn't receive any more blows to the head, or he may remain this way permanently.
Mention of the episode's title often provokes very expressive responses of disgust from everyone who has either watched the episode or a review of it. Plenty of cartoon reviewers have expressed their distaste for its story, and in some countries like the Netherlands, it only ever aired once, only to then completely disappear from television entirely, never to be aired again. So what exactly happened to cause such an uproar? Although SpongeBob's definitely had its fair share of fails during the years, it's not often that a response like this comes from it. We have had episodes that audiences were outraged about because of their cruel stories, or some that had great concepts but very poor execution. Squid Baby reached infamy similar to One Course Meal and A Pal for Gary as being one of the worst episodes of the show. But does it truly deserve such a reputation? To answer that question, we need to look a little deeper into it. Starting with its squid torture elements, which we don't need all that much time for here, as I personally think we can conclude rather quickly that those complaints are more than a bit overblown. One of the reasons why torture episodes fail is because the suffering one has to endure was often done intentionally by the other characters around them.
Squidward, what's this about?
Squidward, how come he's so emotional?
Is he the bad guy?
Squidward?
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 Oh, that's it!
Their actions are often very calculated and more often than not don't really feel like the characters have next to no regard for the well-being of others. Like with the episode Gone, where the Bikini Bottomites literally leave SpongeBob behind for a whole week. Unbeknownst to SpongeBob whereabouts they actually are. Squidward going through a very severe injury to the point where he is regressed is painful for sure. However, his pain, I would argue, was never in the least bit intentional. Throughout it all, SpongeBob shows very genuine concern for the poor guy, and does everything he can within his power to help him. Whether he ends up making things worse in the process is a whole nother debate. But I do at least applaud SpongeBob for trying to help as much as he can, even if his methods don't always work out. But that is, I believe, not even the biggest complaint against it, as Squid Baby is a victim of some very unfortunate implications with its story. Squidward's injury, although portrayed in a serious manner, has been interpreted as little more than fetish content for the creators, because of the age play, the diapers, and the bodily fluids. The responses to Squidward's age regression have not been very charitable, to say the least. There is no shortage of audiences who heavily criticize Squid Baby for telling a story that relies more on fetish fuel rather than actual jokes. And as you can probably guess by now, the episode almost exclusively consists of Squidward being in diapers, as he is very badly regressed. This is where the conversation starts to get a little more complicated. Fetish fuel is nothing new to the animation industry, or even the creative industry as a whole. There's Totally Spites, which is literally kink galore. Spongebob itself has several instances where Spongebob goes full-on nude. Fairly OddParents has several characters getting swallowed whole. But what makes this discussion complicated is how audiences look at it and how they respond to it. And of course, how audiences look at it will determine whether or not they will actually be able to look past it. Now, I am not one to tell you how you should feel about something this incredibly complicated a subject. But I do want to say that I find it a bit concerning that so many people have looked at this and believe that Squid Baby is nothing more than a fetish episode. Because I don't get that vibe from it at all as I watch through this. The opening sees SpongeBob and Patrick playing with baby toys and even acting like actual babies themselves, which could be interpreted as age play, where you roleplay as being a different age. But upon doing some more research on age regression, I found that it's also often caused by a number of mental disabilities, such as ADHD or autism. And Squidward, beyond just being in diapers until finally reverting to his adult self, is suffering something incredibly severe. Let's be real. Head injuries are nothing to be sneezed at. They can cause a massive number of problems to the human brain. Age regression is just the tip of the iceberg. It has a tendency to cause memory loss, shut off any number of your limbs, leaving you disabled for a time, and it can even end your life when it is particularly bad. It should be obvious by now, but I certainly do not agree with the idea that this is just a fetish episode. Above all else, I believe that Squid Baby is a very realistic portrayal of what head injuries actually do to someone, which I respect it for, and I think it deserves a little more credit than what it has been getting ever since its inception. By this point, I think I made it clear that I don't necessarily agree with the common consensus surrounding Squid Baby. I believe that it was a very big example of an episode that had some very unfortunate implications, and that its reception would have been much more favorable had it not been about age regression. I'm certainly glad that I gave it another viewing, reflect on it, and made a whole Koen's Corner on it to share my own thoughts for it. Researching this video was definitely an endeavor. I learned a lot about how the human brain works from it, and I even got to learn a little bit of history. Though I think I should disclose that I am by no means an expert on any of the subject matter discussed here. Please do take this video with a grain of salt, and talk to your doctors about potential injuries you sustain yourself. I also want to take this moment to thank Phantom Strider for inspiring me to make this video. He discussed Squid Baby first, and he did so way better than I could, frankly. The link to his channel will be in the description down below if you want to check that out. And with that, my time to tune out has finally come. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you creators in the next one.